The United States and Canada are neighbors. They share a long border. They also do a lot of business together. Buying and selling things between them is very important for both countries. But recently there was a problem. On June 27, 2025, the President of the United States made an important decision. He suddenly stopped all discussions about trade with Canada. The reason was a new tax planned by Canada. This tax is for big American companies that work online, like large technology companies. The President said he did not agree with this tax. He felt it was not fair to the U.S. Stopping the talks was a surprise to many people. Only a few weeks before, things seemed positive. The President and the leader of Canada, Prime Minister Carney, met at a big meeting called the G7 Summit. They seemed friendly there. They even made a promise. They said they would finish a new trade agreement within 30 days. People were hopeful for a good new deal. But the President's sudden announcement ended these hopes. He said that because of Canada's tax, the U.S. would stop talking. He also said the United States would prepare to put new tariffs on goods coming from Canada. A tariff is an extra tax on imports. The President felt that Canada had not kept a promise made at the G7 meeting, which led to this threat of new tariffs. This news has created a lot of uncertainty. People are worried about what will happen next. It makes the relationship between the two close neighbors less certain. This first chapter tells about this sudden stop to important trade talks. It introduces the problem of the new tax and the threat of new tariffs. It shows how quickly good feelings about trade can change, creating concern for the future between the U.S. and Canada. 2. A new tax on tech companies. Canada made a new tax. They call it the Digital Services Tax, or DST. This tax is for very big online companies. Companies like Google and Meta make a lot of money from people in Canada. Canada wanted these big companies to pay more tax there. The new tax is 3%. It is on the money these large companies make from online services in Canada. But this tax is different. It is retroactive. This means companies must pay the tax not just from today, but from the year 2022. Because of this, some companies will need to pay Canada about $2 billion soon. Canada said they created this tax to get more money. They also said other countries are doing similar things. They wanted to be fair. But the United States did not like this tax. The U.S. government saw it as a problem. They said the tax was not fair to American companies. They felt it was an attack on businesses from their country. Leaders from 7 important countries, the G7, met. They talked about taxing big online companies. They made an agreement about a global tax plan. The United States decided not to have a similar tax they were thinking about. But Canada decided to keep its new tax. It did not remove the digital services tax. This decision made the United States very unhappy. The U.S. felt that Canada did not follow the spirit of the G7 talk. They felt Canada should have removed its tax too. This disagreement about the new tax became a very big problem between the two countries. It caused tension and made things difficult for trade discussions. 3. A friendly meeting. Just a few weeks before, things looked very different for trade talks between the United States and Canada. There was a big meeting of leaders from 7 countries. It was called the G7 Summit. This important meeting happened in Alberta, Canada, in the middle of June. The feeling at the summit was positive. The world leaders seemed friendly. They talked about important global issues. The U.S. President and Canada's Prime Minister, Mark Carney, met there. Their meeting seemed friendly to many people. It appeared the two leaders were getting along well and were close to an agreement on trade. After their talk, they made a promise. They said they would finish a new economic deal between their countries very soon. They aimed to complete the deal within 30 days. This promise created hope for a good result in the trade talks. At that time, U.S. officials were also optimistic about trade. They felt positive about making deals with Canada and also with other countries around the world. They thought they could reach many new agreements soon. It truly seemed like a hopeful time for international trade. However, this positive feeling and hope did not last long. The sudden decision to stop all trade talks with Canada was a big and surprising change. It happened very fast after the G7 meeting. The hope for a new agreement quickly turned into a difficult situation and new problems. This shows how quickly things can change between countries. One moment there was a friendly meeting and a promise for a trade deal in a short time. The next moment, the talks were stopped and serious issues began. The G7 meeting in Alberta now serves as a memory of that recent positive time. The friendly talks there are a sharp contrast to the conflict and uncertainty that came shortly after. It highlights the fast change from hope to tension. 4. The President's announcement. The President decided to share important news about Canada. He used his social media page, Truth Social, and also spoke to reporters at the White House. His announcement was very strong. He talked about the new tax Canada planned to use on big technology companies. The President said this tax was very bad, using the word egregious. He also said the tax was a direct attack on the United States and American businesses. He felt Canada was treating the U.S. unfairly with this new rule. Because of this tax plan, the President announced that the United States would stop all trade talks with Canada immediately. He made this sudden decision after Canada confirmed it would move forward with the tax. The president also stated that the U.S. would put new taxes, called tariffs, on goods coming from Canada. He said these tariffs would be announced very soon. Later that day, speaking to reporters at the White House, the president repeated his strong statements. He told everyone that he was deeply unhappy about Canada's tax. He also spoke about the power balance in trade. The president said the United States has a lot of power over Canada because of the large amount of trade between them. He told reporters, "Economically, we have such power over Canada." He believed Canada made a mistake by going ahead with the tax plan. He described their action as foolish. He warned that new tariffs on Canadian goods would be announced within the next 7 days. He said the U.S. government would inform Canada about the exact details soon. However, the president did offer one possibility for trade talks to start again. He said that if Canada removed the digital services tax, the United States would agree to restart the discussions. But his main message was firm and direct. He insisted that Canada must straighten out their act first and change their tax plan before any negotiations could continue. The president's public announcement on social media and to the press marked a clear end to the recent positive feelings. It showed that the hope for a fast trade agreement discussed just weeks before was now replaced by conflict. His strong words created a difficult situation. The sudden stop to talks and the threat of new tariffs left many people uncertain about the future of trade between the two neighboring countries. The president's clear statement set a firm position for the U.S. in the dispute. This event became known as the President's Announcement. 5. Canada's quiet reply. Canada had to reply after the sudden news. The Canadian government gave its official answer. It was not loud or angry. It was a calm answer. The office of Prime Minister Carney made a statement. It said Canada would continue to talk with the United States. These talks are not easy. They are complex. But Canada wants the best for its workers and companies. The Prime Minister himself also spoke simply. He said, "It's a negotiation." This showed that Canada still wanted to find a way forward through talks. Canada had planned to start its new tax on large technology companies. This tax is called the Digital Services Tax, or DST. The United States did not like this tax. There was a lot of pressure from the United States to stop it. But Canada decided to continue. They said they would move forward with the tax. The law about the tax was already made, so Canada would keep the law. The first payment for this tax was still planned for the next Monday. This tax would cover money made by companies starting in the year 2022. Before the talks stopped, the Canadian Finance Minister had said that the tax could be part of the trade talks. Maybe Canada could use the tax as a way to get something good in the talks. But when the United States stopped the talks, this plan became difficult. It was like the chance to use the tax in talks was frozen for now. Groups that represent businesses in Canada shared their thoughts. They asked for calm. They were worried about the trade relationship between Canada and the United States. This relationship is very important for both countries. One group, the Business Council of Canada, said the tax was not a good thing. It made the relationship risky. The head of this group asked the Canadian government to offer a deal. The offer would be to remove the tax if the United States also removed its tariffs, which are like extra taxes on goods. The leader of the large province of Ontario also said the tax was not fair. Some people in Canada who study these issues had a different idea. They thought the strong words from the United States were just for show. They did not think big problems would happen right away. They knew the tax law was made a long time ago, about 1 year before. These experts said the timing of the sudden announcement was made to create drama. It was meant to get attention for talks that were already not simple. One expert said Canada's position was okay. The tax was a matter for Canada to decide inside its own country, and it was already a legal rule. So Canada's answer was not a loud fight. It was a calm message that they would continue with their plan for the tax. They still hoped for talks, but they would keep their own law. Business groups wanted a deal to avoid problems. And some experts thought the strong words from the United States were not as big a problem as they sounded. Canada sent its quiet reply. 6. Reactions in the U.S. People in the United States felt different ways about the president stopping trade talks with Canada. Different groups had their own ideas and worries. Technology companies were happy about the president's action. These companies, like big internet and software businesses, felt Canada's new tax on digital services was not fair to them. A group representing these companies said they liked the government's quick and strong answer to Canada. Leaders of these tech businesses thought that other countries taxing their online services was wrong. They felt the U.S. should fight against these kinds of taxes. However, farmers and people who work in factories had mixed feelings. Some were worried about what might happen next. They were afraid of new taxes on goods coming into the U.S. or going to Canada, called tariffs. For example, the president often talked about dairy products. He said Canada made it very hard for American farmers to sell milk and cheese there with high taxes. But many American dairy products already go to Canada with low or no tariffs because of trade rules. Still, U.S. officials wanted American farmers to have more chances to sell their products in Canada. Other industries were also concerned. Factories that make cars, steel, and aluminum often buy parts or materials from Canada. If new tariffs are put on these Canadian goods, it could make things more expensive for American factories. The U.S. buys a lot of steel and aluminum from Canada. Car factories also worried about possible higher taxes on cars made in Canada. Politicians in the U.S. also reacted. Some politicians and other people who did not support the president said stopping the talks was a fast decision and not good for the U.S. They said new tariffs could make things American people buy, like wood for building or car parts, more expensive. But many politicians from the president's political party supported his move or did not speak against it. Tariffs are a key part of the president's trade plans, and some people who support him said he was right to be firm with Canada. So the news about stopping trade talks caused different reactions in the United States, showing how complicated trade between the two countries is for different people and businesses. 7. The economic impact. Stopping the trade talks had important effects on the economies of both the United States and Canada. These two countries trade a lot with each other. Canada is a very big buyer of goods made in the U.S. Every year, people and companies in Canada buy about $349 billion worth of U.S. goods. The U.S. also buys many things from Canada, about $413 billion worth each year. Because they trade so much, many industries on both sides could have problems. Important areas like energy, making cars, farming, and getting materials from the ground, mining, are closely linked. For example, the U.S. buys a lot of oil and electricity from Canada. Also, the U.S. needs important materials from Canada, like special minerals, for making things such as batteries or for the country's defense. The break in talks created a risk of a trade war. This means each country might start putting extra taxes, called tariffs, on goods from the other country. The U.S. leader said the U.S. might add new tariffs on Canadian goods. If this happens, Canada could add its own tariffs on goods from the U.S. in return. This fighting with tariffs could hurt companies that sell things across the border. Putting new tariffs on goods can also make them more expensive for people who buy them. If tariffs are put on things like Canadian wood for building, energy, or parts for cars, then people in the U.S. might have to pay more. The same could happen in Canada if they put tariffs on goods from the U.S. This fighting with tariffs could hurt companies that sell things across the border. Putting new tariffs on goods can also make them more expensive for people who buy them. If tariffs are put on things like Canadian wood for building, energy, or parts for cars, then people in the U.S. might have to pay more. The same could happen in Canada if they put tariffs on goods from the U.S. This situation shows how closely tied the two economies are, and how problems in trade talks can quickly start to cause economic worries for many businesses and people. 8. The future of a friendship. The trade talks between the United States and Canada are now completely stopped. The U.S. president ended the discussions very suddenly. This problem started because Canada plans to begin a new tax on large global technology companies that make money in Canada. The president said this tax is very bad and unfairly targets the U.S. Now, the U.S. government is preparing to put new taxes on many goods coming into the U.S. from Canada. These special taxes are called tariffs. The president announced that the U.S. would tell Canada exactly what these tariffs will be in about 7 days. Adding tariffs makes goods more expensive for buyers. Canada has stated clearly that its new digital tax will start as planned, despite the strong reaction from the U.S. Canada's leaders are now waiting carefully to see what the U.S. will do next with the threatened tariffs. They still say they hope to find a way to talk and solve this problem, maybe through other ways. But the main trade negotiations are currently frozen. If the U.S. adds new tariffs on Canadian products, many things that people buy could cost more money. The U.S. buys a lot of goods from Canada, like cars, energy, wood products, and food. Canada also buys many things from the U.S. Higher prices on these goods could hurt both American and Canadian people and businesses. It could make everyday shopping more expensive for many families. This problem could cause real damage to the long and important friendship between the two countries. The U.S. and Canada are the biggest trade partners for each other and share a long border. Stopping important talks like this and adding taxes on each other can seriously hurt this close relationship. This type of disagreement can make it much harder for them to work together on other important issues in the future. This event shows clearly how trade issues can become very difficult and change very fast under the current U.S. president. It makes the future of trade and working together between these two close countries feel very uncertain and difficult. What do you think this sudden halt in talks will mean for the long-term friendship and trade relationship between the United States and Canada?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.